Our scripture text today comes from Psalm 63, and I'll be reading from the Common English Bible. God, my God, it's you I search for. My whole being thirsts for you. My body desires you in a dry and tired land, no water anywhere. Yes, I've seen you in the sanctuary. I've seen your power and glory. My lips praise you because your faithful love is better than life itself. So I will bless you as long as I'm alive. I will lift up my hands in your name. I'm fully satisfied as with a rich dinner. My mouth speaks praise with joy on my lips. Whenever I ponder you on my bed, whenever I meditate on you in the middle of the night, because you've been a help to me, and I shout for joy in the protection of your wings. My whole being clings to you. Your strong hand upholds me. But what about those people who want to destroy me? Let them go into the bowels of the earth. Let their blood flow by the sword. Let them be food for wild jackals. But the king should rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by God should give praise when the mouths of liars are shut for good. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So what do you long for? I realize we usually don't talk that way about longings. A longing is a yearning desire, and it almost sounds to me like something out of a Civil War era letter. Dearest Elizabeth, I long for you with a yearning desire, even as the battle lingers on. Please give my love to sweet Abigail and young Jebediah. I mean, this is not how we usually talk, is it? But we all have longings, don't we? One of the things that happened back in March when the quarantines kicked in and schools went to online learning is that there were a lot of budding romances that all of a sudden became long-distance things. And so here were young couples, maybe they'd had a few dates, really infatuated with one another, really wanted to see one another, and then they had to be apart. Schools were shut down, they couldn't see one another, they couldn't be together. And even if it's been half a decade since you've had, or half a century since you've had a first date, you probably remember still the intensity of young love. Maybe when you were dating someone new and then you had Christmas break and you had to be apart and you didn't see each other every day and you would spend hours on the back of your bed, your bed looking up at the ceiling, thinking about this person. I remember when I was in college, the young woman I dated at the time, we had to go home for summer and we didn't see each other all of the time. And this is back in the days, if to make a long-distance call, you were kind of thoughtful about that. That cost a little bit of money, and you didn't just pick up the phone and dial. How quaint now all of that seems. And so we would write letters, and not emails. This was before emails, but we would write handwritten letters and put it in an envelope and stamp it and put it in the mail. I'm sure if I could see one of those letters now, it might seem a little silly, but I also think probably I'd be touched by the intensity of the longing. Well, what do you long for? Whom do you long for? We live in a world of instant gratification. We're used to getting the things that we want right away, and so we're not used to waiting long times. And so maybe this is a different way of thinking about things, but we do have longings, don't we? We long for spring during a cold winter day. Maybe it's the middle of February and 20 degrees and you think there will be a day where I will go outside and it won't be painful to go outside, and every day you long for that day that's 70 degrees. Here in this unique time we're in, we long for being back together, don't we? I long for just going out to a restaurant. I haven't sat in a restaurant since the beginning of March. Now, we may get carry out or delivery or things like that, but a nice meal out, I mean, that hasn't happened for months and months. I long for getting together with people not thinking about restrictions, going to a game, a movie, a concert. I long for vacations, sitting in coffee shops, a church fellowship dinner. I mean, these are things that we long for right now, don't we? People in hard circumstances long for relief. The person that's in that soul-crushing job, just working day after day and working that job because he or she needs to have some income, but that person, as they clock in, longs for that day when they can clock out and never have to go back again. The person in sickness longs for relief, to get up and your body doesn't hurt and everything works, and to live a pain-free, easy, healthy life. The people in extraordinary circumstances, in extraordinary challenges, long for, think of the person caring for someone with special needs, trying to hold everything together and failing. These people long for the days when those challenges are not there. What do you long for? Whom do you long for? And do you long for God? That's maybe not how we usually think about our faith, do we? Longing for God. We say God is there all of the time, and we mean it, but we talk about God like God is the 24/7 convenience store that's right next door. You can always go over there if you need something, and that's true. But the Psalms acknowledge also that so much of the life of faith is also times of longing, times of absence. Here in the psalm I just read a couple minutes ago, it says, God, my God, it's you I search for. My whole being thirsts for you. My body desires you. In a dry and tired land, no water anywhere. It's longing for God. I often talk about, I go to Arizona maybe once a year, and there's a retreat that I regularly go to, and I love going there. I have my Arizona friends, but I love the desert. But the desert, I know, is not an easy place to make it for life. One time I was at the renewal center, the retreat center I go to, and was sitting out on a bench out on the edge of the desert, and I saw some deer. And I asked someone later, I said, where did they get water? I mean, there's no lakes or streams. I mean, if it rains, there maybe be a little bit of running water for a while, but there's no constantly running rivers or things like that. And so I said, how do they get water? How do they make it? And I asked someone who lived there in Arizona, and she said, I don't know how, but they do. And I did a little bit of research, and I learned it's, for a lot of animal life that lives in the desert, it's a matter of sort of just kind of cobbling together an existence, getting water in little places here or there. They may get the water from the food they eat. They've learned to sneak into a cattle stock tank. They may live on the edge of the desert where life is just a little bit easier. But I think sometimes, the life of faith is like that, just kind of cobbling together places here or there to find water. The life of faith is not always where everything is simple and easy and wonderful. Sometimes our walk of faith is a matter of praying, God, I don't know where you are, and I long for the joy of faith that I used to have, of knowing and loving you, but that joy is not to be found right now. Sometimes our life of faith is a matter of deep longing. After Mother Teresa died, some of her writings came out that were personal writings, and they became public. And in a lot of her writings, it became clear that she had lived most of her life feeling a sense of absence from God. And here was this person doing celebrated charitable work, extraordinary work, Nobel Peace Prize winner, beloved by all. But when it came out in her writings, it was clear that she lived most of her life with this feeling of the absence of God. And she wrote to a friend, she said to her friend, she says, Jesus has a very special love for you. But as for me, the silence and the emptiness is so great that I look and I do not see. I listen and I do not hear. And she lived basically the last half century of her life doing all these extraordinary things, but also without any real personal sense of the presence of God in her life. I realize these are things we don't usually talk about in church. We're not open and honest about them. But I know many of you have lived this. There are times when you pray, and the answers don't seem to come quickly. There are times that you long for God's help, but yet it seems like you just kind of keep trudging along on your own. There are times that you long for the joy of your faith that you used to have, and it's just not there. The song that we'll hear after my sermon that Sally is going to sing, it expresses it so well. It says, "In the desert, I'm waiting for you, for the water of a word from you. In the desert, I'm waiting for you, and the sky is crystal clear. You're gone." Well, people of God, if you have felt that way, or if you're feeling that way, let me tell you this, that you're not alone. You have company with many. And even right here in the Psalms narrates that kind of experience where it says, God, I long for you. I don't know where you are. Those times will come if you journey long enough in the journey of faith, and they're not easy. The retreat center I go to in Arizona, it's called the Redemptorist Renewal Center. And in the chapel, there's a little church on the grounds there. And in the chapel, there's this quote on the wall in the front from the prophet Isaiah, or from the prophet Hosea. And it says, "The desert will lead you to your heart, where I will speak." And I've spent many hours in that chapel just looking at those verses and pondering them and wondering that maybe those times of deepest longing, maybe those desert seasons, those times of spiritual dryness, maybe if we journey through them, they lead us to a place of deeper knowing, of deeper loving, of a deeper and more mature faith, where the immaturity of our faith is burned off and only what's real is what remains. And so I don't want to just wash it all away and call the bad good and that's that. No. But what I'm saying is maybe those desert journeys, those times of deep longing, they lead us to a place ultimately where God's voice speaks to us in ways that we wouldn't have known or welcomed before. And I think the psalm that we heard here narrates that. It goes on to say, after it expresses those feelings of deep longing and deep sense of, where are you, God? It says this, it says, "I'm fully satisfied as with a rich dinner. My mouth speaks praise with joy on my lips, whenever I ponder you on my bed, whenever I meditate on you at night, because you've been a help to me, and I shout for joy in the protection of your wings. My whole being clings to you. Your strong hand upholds me." People of God, if you are in the desert now, or if you have been, and if you haven't, there's a good chance you will be eventually. If you're in a time where you long for God, I know those times are hard. They're not simple or easy. But you've got company. Right here in the Bible, right here in our scriptures, in the Psalms, you've got company, and you have the company, I believe, with most who have walked the walk of faith. And maybe, just maybe, those times of longing, those desert seasons, maybe they lead us to a place where we hear God speak. Amen.